Hey, I'm Nick Kalikas. Welcome to the show where you get first look at the latest odds before they hit the sports books.
And I'm Miguel Iturrate.
This is the place for a unique look at MMA from a gambler's perspective.
And this is MMA Oddsbreaker. Welcome to the show. Nick Kalikas alongside Miguel Iturrate.
On today's show, we're going to get things started with a little Anderson Silva talk. What's next for the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world? We're also going to look at Bellator's Season 7 tournaments and where they're sitting right now.
And on today's Oddsbreaker segment, I'll be joined by Jeremy Bitor and Kase Keefer. Both guys will help me break 4 original fights that have not hit the sportsbooks yet.
Well, Nick, let's get things started with a little Anderson Silva talk. We saw him last, beating up Stephan Bonner in Brazil, saved the card, and a heroic performance there in September. And there's nothing really on the radar for him now. A lot of the guys in his weight class that might be logical next opponents, Michael Bisping, Chris Weidman, they're booked, so we're not going to see Anderson Silva for a while, it looks like. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a little strange. I mean, I think he's kind of looking for the bigger fights and bigger paydays right now, and I think the UFC realizes that his career, whether we like it or not, might be coming to an end here shortly, so they're going to try to get him the biggest fights that they can. So more than likely, it's the GSP super fight that they're expecting to have happen here, but Condit obviously stands in the way of that, so we'll see how that plays out here shortly. But I think that's the fight they're more looking for than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's logical, would be to lead off with GSP and then work him into a John Jones fight at the end of next year. Because the bottom line is there's been a lot of hype around John Jones and Anderson Silva, but John Jones is booked too. He's also working the reality show. He's fighting Chael Sonnen in April, which means we won't see that fight till the second half of next year. If the GSP fight doesn't happen, that would be a bad sign because we might not see Anderson Silva for almost a year.
Yeah, and it's a shame, really. And I think that right now there's more appeal in that John Jones fight than there is him fighting GSP. So Anderson Silva versus John Jones, I think the diehard fans would rather prefer to see that fight happen than the GSP super fight. We've been talking about GSP versus Silva for how many years now, it seems like. It's been such a long time. So I think the fight itself, it still has obviously some star power. A lot of people are going to be interested to see it, but it's lost a little bit of its thunder. But a fight like John Jones and Anderson Silva picks that back up. I don't think we're going to get to see that fight. I mean, especially with the guys each commenting that they really don't want that fight right now. I doubt we see that, but you're right. We could see it if everything unfolds right, maybe at the end of next year, towards the end of next season.
Well, let's go ahead and get right into the Bellator stuff here. We got Bellator's welterweight tournament. The finals are set with Lyman Good taking on Andrei Korkashov. And solid fight there. What do you think?
Yeah, I love, Bellator has been great, really. I don't think they get enough respect. I know that a lot of the talent on the roster might not be as marquee as the UFC, but they're going out there bringing in some fresh talent and bringing in some okay, solid fighters. And the fights that they do produce are fun to watch in most cases. So I think Bellator is doing an outstanding job. And this welterweight title fight's legit. I mean, I think both guys have a lot of potential and are legit prospects. Lyman Good, man, what could you say about the guy? He's a little bit undervalued, under the radar in most cases here. I think the guy's a legit welterweight. He's very well-rounded. He keeps on improving. But in this matchup with Korkashov, I think he's going to struggle a little bit here. Obviously, the line's not out, but Andrei's going to be the favorite when the line does come out. It's not going to be a huge line. It's pretty common sense there as well. But I think it's an interesting matchup. And the way they match up, Korkashov could be your next Bellator welterweight champion. Nothing taking away anything from Lyman Good. I know he's going to be ready to fight, but that's just my personal thought there.
Yeah, it's a good, solid fight. And Bellator does deserve some credit. I think they deserve some criticism, too. I think one of the problems they have is a situation where they're too married to their tournaments and they're not creative enough in getting their talent fights. Lyman Good is here in a tournament. Again, he's already been through the grind. He legitimately deserves to be in some mid-tier super fights working into a title shot, but there's no other way to do it in Bellator, and that's the way they do it. That's a bad thing. It also has created a situation where the champion in that weight class, Ben Askren, is just sitting around and waiting. This guy could actually be active and have been fighting in Season 7, and we're not going to get a chance to see him because they're too staid and they're too married to this format that they love. That's really the only criticism of him. The talent will come.
Yeah, and again, outside of the UFC, it's hard to find talent. So I think they're doing a good job, like I said, putting these matchups together and putting on some entertaining fights and getting some guys exposure that necessarily a lot of times would not have the exposure. So I think they're doing a good job with everything they're doing so far. They also have a couple other exciting tournament finals coming up. Bellator 83, they have the lightweight tournament final that's taking place right now, which, you know what they did, again, outside of the UFC, it's hard to put together a lot of talented lightweights, so they did what they could in that division. There's also a featured fight between Jessica Ai and Zoila Gurgel on that fight card as well, and I'm really looking forward to that fight because the women do bring it, and these are two of the most talented women definitely in the world.
Yeah, this is a quality fight. I mean, it's again a little bit of my knock on Bellator, where they sometimes lack direction or, you know, get distracted and focused on certain things and get distracted on other things. I really think they dropped the ball by having Zoila Gurgel fight on the undercard earlier on. I think they needed to keep featuring the women and keep pushing them. And this match signals that they're bringing them back onto the main cards. I think that's a great thing. And this is a quality fight, well worth watching.
Yeah, Bellator's smart by putting this matchup on the main card. There's a little bit of history there. They had a little Twitter beef. So these girls, there's no love lost there, let's put it that way. They definitely want to get this fight going, and I think we're going to see an exciting fight. So again, that was at Bellator 83, but also at Bellator 84, we're going to see a couple more titles unfold here, tournament titles, and it's going to be the heavyweight title and also the featherweight tournament finale too, which we recently got a chance to see Shamalayev upset Richmond in that quarterfinal or semifinal, I should say, matchup there. So a lot of exciting tournament finales ahead for Bellator in the near future. And again, I'm a big fan. I do agree with what you said as far as their format kind of restricts them sometimes, and it kind of hinders them. I don't like a lot of that stuff either because their champions do tend to sit a little bit too much. But I think as far as outside of the UFC, they're the best organization out there. They continue to put on exciting fights. And I hope when they do go to Spike that they continue to grow in the right direction and maybe tweak their format a little bit.
Look, they're 80 fights into their their run here as an organization. So it's hard to knock it because they got legs, you know. And what they're doing is they're building up slowly. It's just at times, like I said, the format really hinders them, and they could be further along in some cases. I want to speak a little bit about the heavyweights. All hail Richard Hale. Thank God for Richard Hale. I've been very critical about this heavyweight tournament. I thought the talent level was such that maybe you should just scrap the entire weight class for a little while, similar to the way the UFC did with the lightweight class, last decade. But Richard Hale's really come through. He looks solid, looks good, and I'm hoping that he pulls out this tournament final.
Time to introduce both of our guests for today's Oddsbreaker segment. Making his return to the show, he's the national UFC writer for Bleacher Report, Jeremy Botter. Jeremy, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Also back with us once again today is the lead MMA writer for the Las Vegas Sun, Kase Keefer. Kase, welcome back to the show.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Always fun to be with you.
Now, both of you guys have been on the show several times before, so you guys know how it works. But for those out there that may not, let me quickly explain. Our sponsored sportsbook, BetDSI.eu, has donated a $5K bankroll. Now, I've selected 4 fights today. You guys get to pick from the 4 fights and bet $500 either on the favorite or the underdog. The first 3 fights, the bankroll applies. The 4th fight, it does not apply. We're going to get started first today with a huge fight from UFC 155 in the middleweight division. It's a bout between Alan Belcher and Yushin Okami. Guys, we're going to start off with Jeremy first. I'm going to open Yushin Okami at -170. The comeback on Alan Belcher is going to be +140. Jeremy, give me your take and give me your bet.
My take on this fight is that Alan Belcher simply has more ways to win. With Okami, sure, we've seen him be a very good middleweight in the past, but his main path to win is through decision, as we've seen over the years. Haven't seen him do much else in terms of effective finishing, whereas Alan Belcher is a finisher and is constantly looking for the finish. And I honestly think that's going to be the big difference in this fight. I think Alan Belcher is highly underrated by a lot of people, including this line, and that's why I'm taking him.
All right, a lot of good points made by Jeremy here. He is going to roll with the underdog here, +140 on Alan Belcher. It's going to be 500 to win 700. Let's throw it over to Kase. What do you think about this fight, Kase?
Well, those are some good points by Botter, but I'm just not quite convinced. I like Yushin Okami here. When this fight got announced, I saw a lot of people saying, this is going to be close. This is a great spot for Belcher to pull off a slight upset. And I'm not quite sure. I think a lot of people might just be looking in, the last year and a half in recent history. Belcher has certainly looked better, but you got to consider the competition. I know Okami's 1-2, but one of those losses was to Anderson Silva, and the other was a fight he was dominating for 10 minutes before Tim Bosch stopped him. And then I know that it was kind of a dull, lackluster affair with Buddy Roberts, but I still think if you look back further, both of these guys' last 10 or 12 fights, I just think Okami's a level higher than Alan Belcher. I think this probably will go to decision, and if it goes to decision, I just don't see any way that Okami wouldn't have had his way with him for 3 rounds. So I've got to lean at anything less than 2-1. I think I would lean with Yushin Okami here.
All right, some valid points made also with Kase Keefer here for Yushin Okami. So you are going to lay the juice. It's going to be -170, 850 to win 500 on Okami. So both of our guests split at UFC 155 for this middleweight bout between Okami and Belcher. All right, sticking to that stacked UFC 155 card, this time it's a light heavyweight bout between Forrest Griffin and Phil Davis. This time we're going to start off with Kase. Kase, I'm going to open up Phil Davis as a decent favorite, -290. The comeback is going to be +220. Give me your take and give me your bet.
I had a little bit of trouble with this one. I think I give Forrest Griffin a chance in this fight, and I was thinking I might take a shot with him if he was at 250, but at less than 3-1, I think I'm going to lean Phil Davis. We all know he's got a big edge in athleticism. Should be able to take Forrest down at least a couple times. I don't think he's going to get Forrest down every round. And what kind of concerns me about this fight is that it could be close enough that we go to decision. And we all know it seems like there's one wacky decision per card. I could see Griffin winning a round and maybe pulling out a decision he doesn't deserve. But I think at the price, that's something I just kind of got to put to the back of my head and look at the athletic advantage. And I think I'm going to lean Phil Davis here.
Okay, so Kase is going to go with the favorite here in Phil Davis, -290. It's going to be $14.50 to win $500. Let's throw it over to Jeremy. Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, as much as I hate to agree with Kase, just, on principle, I'm going to have to this time. I think Phil Davis takes this fight. Honestly, I think he takes it easier than probably Kase does because I just haven't seen the fight in Forrest Griffin over the past couple of years. And I don't think he's got what it takes to go in there and withstand Phil Davis downs over the course of 15 minutes or so.
Okay, so Jeremy Botter also agrees in Phil Davis at -290. It's going to be $14.50 to win $500. So both of our guests do agree at UFC 155 that Phil Davis does defeat Forrest Griffin. All right, guys, another big fight recently announced from the UFC. This time it's going to take place UFC on FX 7. It's the headlining bout between Vitor Belfort and Michael Bisping. Again, big implications on the line here for this fight at 185. This time we're going to start off with Jeremy again first here. I'm going to open up Vitor Belfort, the slight favorite, -140. The comeback is going to be +110 on Michael Bisping. So near pick'em, but slight lean a little bit towards Belfort. What are your thoughts?
This is a no-brainer, especially considering the line for me. Michael Bisping as an underdog to Vitor Belfort boggles my mind, and maybe the public thinks otherwise. But I think Bisping has too many tools. He's got too much cardio, too much heart, and too much speed. And honestly, I just don't think Vitor Belfort's that good. We saw a little bit of flash of brilliance from him against John Jones, but it was only a flash. Outside of that, we haven't seen much from him over the past couple of years, and I think Michael Bisping takes this one, and I think he takes it easily.
Okay, so Jeremy making a lot of strong points here for the underdog and Michael Bisping at +110. It's going to be $500 to win $550. Let's throw it over to Kase. Do you agree or disagree with Jeremy on this one?
I agree, and I'm calling shenanigans. I think Jeremy stole my thoughts on this fight somehow. I love Bisping here. I think he's the better fighter. If I can get him at plus money, I'm going to take it. I think he has a lot of edges, but especially in cardio. I think if he gets out of the first round, which I certainly think he's going to do, when's the last time we haven't seen Vitor Belfort kind of fade a little bit as the fight goes on? Bisping is just an animal in that regard. He's going to be the same in the third round as he was in the first round. I just really think this is Michael Bisping's fight, and I expect him to get a big win down in Brazil in January.
Okay, so Kase also finds value at +110 on Michael Bisping. It's going to be $500 to win $550, and both of our guests do like the dog here. Michael Bisping over Vitor Belfort at UFC on FX 7. Time for today's bonus fight on the Oddsbreaker segment. A huge fight recently announced for UFC 156. The featherweight title is up for grabs between Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar. Guys, I did break this line previously when it was rumored for 153. Aldo came in at -175. The betting public took that line and bet it up well over 2-1. I am going to come back out with it now for UFC 156. And we're going to start off with Kase here first on this one. Kase, I'm going to open up Jose Aldo -205. The comeback's going to be +155 on Frankie Edgar. Give me your take and give me your bet.
Wow, I didn't realize that about you originally opened it at 175 and the public came in on Aldo. That kind of scares me a little bit that, I'm not getting the best value here, but I've got to go with Jose Aldo. I'm excited for this fight. I think it's going to be great, but I just think Aldo has a big edge in a lot of areas. I think he's going to be really quick for Frankie Edgar. You always here when guys are dropping weight classes that, they need a fight or two to adjust to the speed. Well, he's not getting that going up against the world's best 145-pounder right away. And also, even though he's dropping a weight class, of course, Aldo's going to be bigger. He's not going to be easy to take down or anything. So I like Jose Aldo in this fight. I just think I think it's a good spot for him, and I think he's going to get past Frankie Edgar.
Okay, so Kase does like Jose Aldo minus 205. It's going to be $1,025 to win $500. Let's throw it over to Jeremy. What do you think about this fight? Aldo versus Edgar.
Yeah, I agree with Kase again. And I mean, I do think Jose Aldo wins this fight. And I really like the value at this. I wish I could get a little bit lower. If Frankie Edgar went to, over 2.5, maybe 3 to 1, I would probably pull the trigger on him. But at this, I've got to go Aldo because he's got edges in just about every single category, including, I think he and Frankie are probably going to have the same speed, which is usually Frankie's big advantage. Being super fast and being able to jump in and strike with jabs and counter strikes, and he's not going to have that here. Aldo hits really, really hard, probably harder than anybody has hit Edgar yet, and that includes Gray Maynard. For all those reasons and many more, I do like Aldo to retain his title.
Okay, so Jeremy Botter also on Jose Aldo, laying the juice minus 205. It's going to be $1,025 to win $500. So both of our experts do agree at 156 that Jose Aldo does retain his title over Frankie Edgar. Stay tuned for what Miguel and I have to say during our odds adjustment segment. Awesome stuff on today's Oddsbreaker segment, guys. We broke 4 huge fights that are going to hit the sportsbook soon. Before I let you go, I do want to let you take a couple seconds here and let everybody know what's going on, or plug your Twitters, plug the websites. Let's start off with Jeremy first.
Yeah, you can find my stuff at bleacherreport.com/cagedin, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Jeremy Botter.
All right, Kase, what about you?
At Kase Keefer on Twitter, and you can go to LasVegasSun.com and read all our MMA coverage and sports betting coverage, kind of best of both worlds for this show.
Okay, guys, great job, and we'll have both of you back on down the road.
Coming out of the Oddsbreaker segment, our 2 guests, Jeremy Botter and Kase Keefer. Great job as always. They matched up on 3 of the 4 fights, Nick, but we're going to adjust some of these lines here. Why don't you take people through your thought process?
When a fresh line does hit the sportsbook, you typically see a little bit of movement early on when a max bet or 2 comes in. So we're going to take that same philosophy, same principle, and put it into play here during our odds adjustment segment. Now, the first fight was a middleweight bout between Belcher and Yushin Okami from UFC 155. I opened up Okami minus 170, the comeback on Belcher plus 140. Both guys actually split on this fight. So I'm going to leave the line as is at minus 170. It's going to hit the sportsbooks. But before we do anything else, I want to get Miguel's thoughts.
It's a solid fight at middleweight. I'm going to go with Belcher in this particular case just because I think Okami seems to be lacking that killer instinct lately. I think he's a guy who's a tough competitor, and he looks at it as a competition, not as like I'm coming out to kill you. And I think Belcher's just about ready to break through into the top echelons of this division. I think he's going to be a hungrier fighter. I think Okami's been around a while, and I just don't like the matchup for Okami.
Yeah, I can understand why you guys are leaning a little bit more towards Belcher. I mean, the last few fights that Okami has had, he hasn't looked great. Even against Roberts, he ended up getting a dominant win, but he didn't look that great picking up that win as well. So maybe Okami's on the decline a little bit, but the thing with me is I've always been impressed with Belcher, but there's still too many holes in his game as well. And I think looking back at their first fight, since that time, Okami's the one that actually proved even more. Now, he ended up getting the decision win the first fight. I think since that time, Okami has actually elevated his game and learned how to become a winner, and to implement his game plan with the wrestling, with the grinding style that he has. His stand-ups improved a lot more. So I do think that actually since that time, again, the improvements have come in Okami's direction. I think he's going to look to take the fight to the floor, control most of the fight, and I think he's going to be effective in doing so. So my lean, again, is a little bit more towards Okami here in this fight. It's hard to bet where the line is right now, but if we do see some droppage, I think that there might be a play on Okami because we're probably all underestimating him here a little bit, and we're maybe overvaluing Belcher. I know he's hot right now. He's definitely a talented middleweight getting his shot, which he deserves, but I still think it's a bad matchup for him.
Hey, so Jeremy, Kase, and they split and we split too.
Exactly, and I think a lot of the betting public's going to split, so a good spot to open this line. Okay, let's move on to the other fight from UFC 155. This time, a light heavyweight bout between Phil Davis and Forrest Griffin. Now, this time, both of our experts did come in on the favorite side. They think that Phil Davis is going to defeat Forrest Griffin, so the line was minus 290. I'm going to have to adjust the line a little bit. It's going to now hit the sports books at minus 305. The comeback on Forrest plus 235. Give me your thoughts, Miguel.
Another solid fight. They're putting together a great card there at the end of the year. It's interesting to me because Phil Davis is a great athlete. My one knock on Phil Davis is I'd like to see him, progressing and have 5 or 6 or 8 more fights under his belt. And that's the one thing that Forrest has to his advantage, is he's been in a lot of big grinding fights, and he's got the experience factor. And I'm wondering if he can make something happen in this fight. If Phil Davis can't take him out, and he has to grind it out, Forrest could find a way to sneak some rounds in, as one of the guys pointed out, and you know, possibly eke out a decision. He could also finish the fight, because Forrest is still dangerous. He's not burnt in the same way as I see guys like Minotauro or other guys. He's a guy who I'm worried more about his mindset. But I think once the fight starts, he's still dangerous.
Yeah, he is. And you know what? Honestly, I think that Forrest does have a great chance to pull this fight out. But if it's the Forrest that comes in the fight, that comes with a little bit of mental focus, he has talent, you know, if that version of Forrest shows up. But I'm not sure. I don't know if that version of Forrest is still out there. So I have to agree with the guys here, too. I think Phil Davis is aside. He has momentum on his side, coming back with that win, bouncing back with that win over Prado. I think his game plan, his athleticism, is probably going to win him the fight. If Forrest shows up, though, it is going to be a very interesting fight. That's why you can't really bet it 3-1 on, I think, a line like this against a talented guy, because Forrest is probably the more well-rounded overall fighter. Now, obviously, his wrestling is going to be the weakness here in this fight, but it's still a tricky fight to bet. You can't count Forrest out because he is that talented, but we just haven't seen it lately. So I do understand what everybody's saying, and I think the line, if it gets too much higher than 3 to 4 to 1, around that area, 3.5 to 1, there might be a bet on Forrest to be made here. But for me, it's a type of fight that says pass all over it.
We've been asking the question about Forrest for a couple of fights now. What kind of Forrest is going to show up? Which mindset? You know, he's looked like he's not wanted to be there on occasion. I think, though, that the situation is that once the cage closes, Forrest does, you know, go game on. And what's dragging him down a little bit is all the hype and the hoopla and stuff. He's really down to earth Georgia boy, and he doesn't like it. But once the fight starts, I think he's still a very dangerous guy.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope he shows up to fight, because then it'll be a great fight. All right, let's move on to UFC on FX 7, the main event there between Bisping and Belfort. An awesome fight. Basically, a pick 'em fight. I opened up Belfort, the slight favorite, -140, comeback +110. Both guys did come in on the underdog here in Michael Bisping. So I'm going to adjust the line here. It's going to drop down to -130 when it hits the sports books. The comeback's going to be even money on Michael Bisping. Give me your thoughts, Miguel.
It is a great fight. I'm excited about it. Now, Bisping's a guy that we've talked about potentially facing Anderson Silva, that he's been in the title picture. They promised him a title fight. It seems for a little while he's been waiting around. But once I really look at his record, he really does lack that one signature win. And Vitor Belfort could represent that win. I mean, Belfort, bottom line is he's a potential Hall of Famer in the UFC for his entire body of work, going back to, you know, the earliest of UFCs. He's coming off a very good performance, a performance that raised his stock against John Jones. And Bisping really needs a signature win. Bisping also seems to have trouble with athletes. And Belfort is a better athlete than he gets credit for, especially in the opening round. Once he tires, yeah, of course, we've all seen his problems. But he's explosive in the very beginning, and he has the potential to take Bisping out early. If Bisping has to make it a grind, then he'll win. But it's a fight that Bisping really does need to win. He needs a signature win.
I mean, for me, I'm going back and forth a little bit, but I do agree with the guys. I would rather take the plus money here. It wasn't a lot of plus money, +110. Like I said, it's almost a pick'em fight here. I do believe it is a pick'em type of fight, though. I opened up a little bit more in Vitor Belfort's favor because I think the general betting public, you said, he gained a little bit of respect in that loss to John Jones. And the way these guys match up, it is an interesting fight. It's going to be a difficult matchup for Bisping if he doesn't fight smart and doesn't fight intelligent. But I think that Bisping has improved in that area as well, and it's his fight to win or lose a little bit. I think that what Kase said and what Jeremy said, a lot of that stuff's accurate. He does tend to fade a little bit after round 1. I think that Bisping is the better overall fighter at this stage in their career. So it's hard for me to argue that Bisping is not the signs. I personally actually like that side right now. It could change my mind before the fight happens, but my lean is a little bit towards Michael Bisping. So when it does hit the books again, it's going to be -130, even money, so near pick'em with a slight lean for the betting public towards Vitor Belfort.
If the UFC had put Michael Bisping in the main event in London against Anderson Silva, you wouldn't have heard any complaints from me. He deserves to be among the top 185-pounders, but this win will help him raise his stock even more.
Okay, let's move on to the bonus fight from today, man. A super fight, the main event now from UFC 156, the featherweight title up for grabs between Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar. I can't wait for this fight. I'm so pumped. I opened the line -205, comeback +155 on Jose Aldo. Like I said during the Oddsbreaker segment, I did previously open the line. I hit the books at -175. The betting public was all over Jose Aldo, so they bet the line up. So it was a no-brainer to kind of put the line at 2 to 1 right now. It wasn't a hard line, or I didn't have to bust my butt to come up with the information here because all the work was done before. But that being said, both of our guests did come in on that side. Again, they laid the juice on Jose Aldo, so I have to raise the line. It's going to now hit the sports books at -215, the comeback +165 on Frankie Edgar. Give me your quick thoughts, Miguel.
You know, you can pretty much agree with everything that the guy said in the Oddsbreaker segment about this fight. Aldo should be the favorite. Aldo is, you know, on a massive roll here. One interesting take and one thing to think about, though, is I think that the extra time, Aldo is a young kid. He's got, you know, money coming in. He's still screwing up, you know, messed up his foot on a bike. And he's been rehabbing his foot and stuff. And I think he thinks this is just another fight. It's his next fight, and he's taking it like that, which makes he's a very dangerous guy. But Edgar is a guy who game plans. He always comes out better the second time around with BJ, with Henderson, with Maynard. He's always improved when you gave him a chance to game plan. So now he was ready for 153. And now he gets to refine that game plan and reset, and he's using all this time to get better. I would have thought that Edgar might get credit for that from the betting public, but it's not the case, and I might go Edgar on this one.
Yeah, it depends on where the line does end up now. If the betting public continues to bet that line up to closer to 2.5 to 1, you definitely got to make a play on Frankie Edgar. I mean, like you said, with the added time, the fight's no longer in Brazil, with the injury that Jose Aldo is coming off of, I think there's value in Frankie Edgar at +170, +180, anywhere around there, you definitely got to take a stab. I mean, the guy's so talented. Now you're going to see definitely an advantage for Jose Aldo on the feet. I mean, he's going to have that knockout power with his hands, with his feet, with his knees. The speed factor, I think, is going to be a little bit more neutral, or Frankie Edgar might have a slight advantage here as well with the speed. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but we'll have to see how it plays out. It's going to be a very entertaining fight, and if one of the guys doesn't get caught early, which is probably going to be Frankie, if he does not get caught early and put out early, it's going to be a fight. And if it hits the cards, it's going to be an interesting decision. So really looking forward to it, and I think right now the value might be on Frankie Edgar.
Well, that's it for another episode of MMA Oddsbreakers. A special thanks to our two guests, Jeremy Botter and Kase Keefer, as always bringing great information to the Oddsbreakers segment. And you can look for the lines that Nick broke with the guys to start popping up at the sport books over the next couple of weeks.
Also, make sure you head over to our website, MMAOddsbreaker.com, and check out all the betting previews, information, and much, much more. And check us out on Twitter at MMA Oddsbreaker. For Miguel Iturrate, I'm Nick Kalikas, saying until next time, enjoy the fights.